Welcome to the MyPersonalFootballCoach.com Youth Soccer Player Development Podcast, episode 15 with Willem Weiss.
Welcome to MyPersonalFootballCoach.com Soccer Player Development Podcast. Discover all the secrets, hints and tips about soccer player development and soccer coaching from some of the leading figures in world soccer. Here's your host, Saul Isaacson-Hurst.
Hi guys, Saul here, back again from MyPersonalFootballCoach.com. Welcome back to another show. This week we've got a fantastic guest for you, someone I'm really excited about having on the show. His name is Willem Weiss. He's an experienced coach from Holland, worked for many years at PSV and now is at Ajax. If you don't know, Ajax Academy from Amsterdam is one of the most consistent producers of Champions League players in world football. Talking about player development in a structured academy environment, these guys seem to have the knack for it. It's not only that they produce players, but they produce certain types of players, flamboyant, skillful players. They really have a culture there of producing technical footballers for the very highest echelons of world football. So really lots of valuable information to share, not only about Ajax, but also Dutch football as a whole. And I know if you're interested in player development and in coaching, you're really going to like this show. Busy few weeks for myself coming up. Really looking forward to going back up to Wolverhampton Wanderers in August. Proud and honoured to say that they have again signed up as a partner club to have us supporting their foundation phase players with the Dynamic Ball Mastery Programme, the online technical training programme, our homework programme. So honoured that such a massive club like Wolverhampton Wanderers would choose to have us on board and supporting their players. An academy that not only produces consistently players for their first team, but also for the English youth teams, and really is one of the best academies in the country, a top category 1 academy. So really privileged to be involved with those guys again, and honoured. If you're interested want to know more about the club partnership program, if you're a grassroots club or pro club, just drop us a line and we can let you know how we can support you, your players and your coaches in helping your players fulfill their potential. So without further ado, let's get into the show. So, Willem Weiss, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So can you just tell us a little bit about your playing and coaching journey, please?
Of course I can. I ended up really early. I think I was only 21 years old as a footballer, so I was really young. And that was because I screwed up 2 higher educations. One is a gym teacher and the other one is a specialist in sport, health and management. It were really tough educations, and I liked the practice sessions, but I didn't like the theories. During that summer breaks, I had some coaching clinics in the United States of America in San Francisco. And I've met some people there which were working at PSV Eindhoven at the academy. I told them at the beginning of the week about my situation at my educations. And at the end of the weeks, I think they were a bit impressed about my coaching qualities. And they asked, well, Willem, if you ever want to work in football, we can give you a chance. Or you could start next season with an internship. So I did. I started with 6 days in a week. Didn't earn any money. I had to travel with a fake train ticket. But you know, it was a dream for me, and it was a dream to come true, to work in football full time. So I grabbed it, and it was my dream. So it was everything to me. So then I quit to playing for myself, and I focused fully on becoming a football coach.
And so, what was your first role there at PSV?
It was, I was looking around with a lot of different coaches from U9 till like U15. I was focusing on, to become a specialist on technical skills. So I was working with somebody who was like full-time focusing on technical skills, who was coaching the U9 till the U19s. And then on the Saturdays and in the weekends, I was, just with a team who had a game in the weekend. So that was like my week schedule. I learned a lot there.
And so then And then where are you at the moment then? Because you're not PSV anymore, are you?
No. Well, I started at PSV. I did it for 6 years, PSV Eindhoven. I think I worked with the U9, still the U19s, with technical skill sessions. I was a team coach over there with the U10s and U9s. But after 6 years, I felt I had to do something else, and new people, new club, new culture, new experiences. So, I had a chance to move to Ajax Amsterdam, which is, in my opinion, is the best club in Holland, maybe one of the best clubs in the world, and I think a club which is famous about their youth academy. So when that chance came on my path, it was easy for me. My father always told me that Ajax was the best club. So I'm there now for the next season, my 5th year. I'm coaching there with the U15s and the U16s. I'm working there with some ex-professional players. Maybe you know the names. It's Northern Woter and Richard Knopper. I'm also coordinating like a program for the U13s till the U16 talents, to focus on their individual developments, and also with the biggest talents of that ages. And as a last, I will train with the U17 and U19s boys for next season, to train on a high rhythm, technical skills, and to develop the creativity. So that are the things I'm doing now.
Fantastic. So just going back a bit, can you just tell us about your role then at PSV in terms of being a technical coach? What did that look like in practice? What's your day-to-day things? What sort of sessions were you actually doing with the players?
Yeah. I think in that time PSV was really focusing on technical skills. So, they were really inspired by the wheel curve method, from Ricardo Moniz and that kind of people. So they wanted to do it on another way, and I was together with somebody else, with Jeff Dabresser, who worked for Fulham. He's working now in Holland again. And we were focusing on technical skills. So what we did was, every team had one session of around 60 minutes a week, only for focusing on technical skills. So that was, like the Cruyff turn, like with scissors, to beating the 1v1 in attacking, but also in defending, to stimulate creativity and that kind of thing. So that was every team from U9 till U19, every week, one session of 1 hour, 60 minutes.
And then, so as yourself, then, where did you learn? Where did you develop yourself? Did you learn from the guys at PSV, or how did you already have this knowledge about the skills training?
I don't exactly know how it started, but when I was really young, I was really interested by the tapes of wheel curve, and I was practicing a lot for myself on the street, because I grew up in a really small village. It was not an opportunity to play with the other kids every day. So I had to train for myself. And I think that influenced me. So I started up to work with that theories, and then you're gonna develop as a coach, and then you combine that two things. So your own qualities as a player, you combine it with your coaching style. And I think in America, in the United States, we had so many hours. We had 3 sessions a day, 3 sessions of 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon, 2 hours in the evening. So that was really busy. So you develop really fast then. And then at PSV I was full time. So it goes so fast then.
So you said a mention there about stimulating creativity. What did you mean by that?
I mean by that players can do something what nobody expects them to do, or that I think that young players are more gifted, more talented than we ever know. So I think we give them, in general, we give them too many tasks. So then they're gonna act like robots. But I think they could figure more out by themselves. So creativity for me is that that you give them some freedom and that you give them some space that they can find their own solutions. But you have to give them the space. And I think it's very important.
So how does that tie in with you coaching them the Cruyff turns and the scissors and those sorts of things? Because in this country there's a narrative by some, not by myself, by saying that if you're teaching kids skills, that actually you're stunting their creativity, and then you're imposing things on them. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you have to give them some basics. So I think they have to know which moves they could use. But when they have some skills, in their basics, it's up to them which one they want to use. So I think every situation in football is another situation, and it depends about time, about space, about an opponent. So they have to recognize and make a decision by themselves which move is the best move in the typical situation. Do you understand what I mean?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
So it's quite interesting because you mentioned there about when your development, you on the street learning by yourself. Would you maybe talk about or describe it as you're creating this? I visited Ajax a few times. They said they're trying to create this street football atmosphere within the club. This methodology, this feeling of street football, this individual brilliance within the club, which maybe comes with some coaching and obviously lots of freedom as well.
Yeah, but I think, and then we have a big problem in Holland. I was playing on the street for myself, and I think some other kids are doing that as well. But I think the culture in Holland is changing a bit from street to something like PlayStation or that kind of things. So a lot of kids, they don't play anymore on the street. So what we then want to do is we bring them back to the streets. So if they don't go to the street, we will bring the streets to them, and give them the opportunity on that way to develop their creativity and technical skills.
So what sort of strategies have you got then for bringing the street to the boys?
Yeah, that has something to do with two things. I think one is with your exercises. So you have to organize your exercises that it's like a street level, like what I told you before. You can work with some space, with some opponents, with some time. And the other thing is sometimes we really train on a parking place on a street. So that's, for example, our U8 till U12s have at least one session a week at the street, at a parking place, and then they just play. They just play games. So that's how we do it.
Very interesting. And also then, obviously another big topic of debate here is to talk about, isolated practice v opposed practice. What's your opinion on that? What's the importance of either or, and where should it be balanced? Yeah,
that's a good question because I think it's a difficult one. In my opinion, I prefer the opposed practice, but sometimes I do the isolated practice because I think you can use isolated practice perfectly in, for example, a warming up, simply because I think that it's better than just running some rounds behind the field. So then I think it's better to isolate practice. But I think football is more than just isolated situations, because you have to work with an opponent, with time, with really small spaces. On the highest level there's less time and the spaces are much smaller. So we have to prepare the players that they have to find the solutions in that small spaces with less time. So then I think we have to learn them to practice in your with a post practice. But I think for amateur players which are not really talented, which have not the big qualities, you have to start up anywhere. So you don't throw them in the deepest part of the bath, So you start something easier, and of course then you start with isolated practice.
So in terms of like the boys, then you're coaching. You talked about the Cruyff turn and the scissors. Are you really trying to get them to do the perfect type technique, or do they have freedom to explore that technique? I mean, obviously, how does that work in terms when you're working isolated, if it is at the beginning of the session?
In my opinion, I have to give the perfect example for the kids, so they could see what what it's like to do the Cruyff turn, for example. But then I think every player has his own style of playing. So when you like to do the Cruyff turn, that's perfect. But when you would like to do another turn, but with the same result or maybe a better result, of course I don't say, hey, you have to do the Cruyff turn because the other one, it fits better for you. So I think we have to give them all the turns there are, and they have to pick only one or maybe two, which can they build up as their own weapon and they can use in the game. So that's what I mean with creativity. We have to give them some opportunities, but they have to choose one which fits the best for them.
Yeah, I agree. I use the same methodology in my coaching. It's about showing the players some tools, maybe what they want to use, and then they decide what they want to use. You can't impose them. I think this is the big misconception about technical training, is that you're saying to players, you have to use this skill, you have to use that skill. So as you say, it's more of a case of supporting creativity and helping to feed that.
Exactly, because everybody in the world likes the Lionel Messis and the Cristiano Ronaldos. So if you could create them, that would be very difficult. Because for example, another example, I think Xavi Hernandez, the ex-player from Barcelona, he was a great player, but he was not beating opponents in 1v1, but he was beating opponents with passing, with shooting, with that kind of things, with his awareness. So that's what I mean with every player has his own qualities, and I think you have to stimulate that qualities.
I suppose, I suppose Xavi, sorry to interrupt, William, I suppose Xavi had his own 1v1 style, didn't he? With his movements to receive, to space, to use the ball. And then obviously, as we'll talk about hopefully in a little bit, well, maybe talk about it now, sort of what sort of are the different 1v1 situations you work on yourself as a coach? Yeah.
We have, of course, we have receiving the ball, so that's the first touch. We have shooting as well. We have beating opponent in your back. We have beating an opponent in your front. And we have the last one is when you have an opponent on your side. So there are different situations, and we want to train them all together.
So how does that look like then? Talk in terms of delivery. Do you have like a curriculum? How much time do you spend on each? What's that look like in practice?
It's not. I don't really have a schedule like that. But what I try to do is when I'm playing, for example, a 1v1, I start up with that the opponent is coming from the front. But after a few minutes, I move him so that he's coming from the back. And after a few minutes again, he will come from the side. So that means that an exercise will change after a few minutes. So everything is changing, so they have to be fully focused. And then, in only one session, in one exercise, you train a lot of different technical skills. And my favorite is to combine it with, for example, first touches, finishing, all the things. So, because it's more game real. So I prefer that one.
So in terms of like when you're working with a lot of the older players, obviously, do you then sometimes say, will you take the number 7 and the number 11 out and work on some specific areas of the pitch with those players individually, maybe with one defender, with the player on the side or coming from the back and working to create shots or crosses?
Yeah, we do that kind of things. So what we're going to do then is we have to we have to describe for ourselves. So what do we want from a player on a typical position in the game? When we know all the things, we can make training session for them to bring them into situations which they have more repetitions. So then when they have more repetitions and coming more into the situations which are the real situations which they also have in the game, we think they will develop automatically.
Interesting. And what do you do for yourself as like a coach? What do you do to improve yourself and continue your learning?
Well, that's a lot. I finished my my UEFA A Youth Academy only one month ago. I'm reading some books. I'm listening to podcasts like this. I'm watching all the football which is on TV. You're reading about it in some magazines. I'm reading on internet about interesting articles. I'm visiting clubs abroad. I was in England. I was at Fulham. I was at Liverpool twice. I went to the Chelsea Academy for, I think it's around 8 or 9 years ago. I went 2 times to the Barcelona Academy. I had a really interesting conversation with a coach of Atletico Madrid on a tournament with our U15s 2 weeks ago in Cannes in the south of France. So you have to find a lot of things, a lot of different ways to develop yourself as a coach.
And just tell us a little bit then about your personal coaching development journey. What's that look like in Holland? What are the steps you took and to get to that UEFA A youth license? Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. When I came in at PSV, I was like a nobody as a coach, and I developed myself to a more experienced coach, who was ready for Ajax. I arrived there as a child, but I left as a young adult. It's when you start as a young coach, you even don't know how much there is to discover, and there are a lot of different styles and interesting articles, and there's so much to find. But you have to be hungry to find your best ways, and then you're gonna think about is this a theory which I can use every day, and I think that's very important. So you have to look for something new every day, every single day. So I think that's very important. And I think every human being has a dream, and when you have that dream, you have to find out what kind of things do you need to make it to that dream. And for me, that was, for example, the UEFA A license. So then it's easy. Then you have to do it.
So when did you do your level 1, for instance, and how long did that take you? What was that like?
So what do you mean with level 1? I think
your first coaching badge, your first ever coaching badge in Holland.
Yeah, that was at my first year at PSV. So they said, okay, you can come for an internship, but you have to start. We call it in Holland. It's the UEFA C license. So I started immediately, and 1 year later I started up with my UEFA B, and then I had some years. I had some other interests with other courses and that kind of things. But this year it was. But UEFA UEFA A is a pretty hard course. It's a pretty hard license in Holland. So you have to work pretty hard for it with a lot of time to spend on it. So that's difficult. But this year it was the right time for me. So I started with it.
So going back to your time at PSV when you first entered there, can you tell us a little bit about what's the methodology there at PSV? What's the structure of the program there?
I can't say anything about how they're working now, because that's, for me, it's like 4 or 5 years ago. But when I was there, like I told you, we were focusing a lot of technical skills, from the U9s till the U19s. But there was also a little problem with that, because when you're only focusing on technical skills and beating 1v1, that kind of things, it's not always good for like team spirit or when a team has to work together. And I think we found that out. So,
can you can you tell us some of the players that came out of that program while you were there?
Yeah, we had. I think everybody knows him. It was Memphis Depay.
Yeah.
He was in our academy. He's a big name now. I think he's a world-class player, or he could be. You know, when he's good focused, he could be a really good player. And you know, that's the other side. All the other players, they were not that big names who made it. So that's the reason why I said it's not only about playing 1v1 and beating the 1v1, because there's much more. But I was really young in that time, so I had developed myself as a coach. So you know, for me now it's easy. I can say that now, but in that time I was fully focused on the technical skills. But I think that's not good. So I think that was also a reason why, despite Memphis Depay, there were further on no more big names who made it to a world-class player.
So then, who are the main influences with you for you as a coach then when you were coaching at PSV? Who had a big impact on your coaching style?
As a young coach, I learned a lot of Willem Weiss. I don't think you know his name, but he was a professional coach in Holland. Then he became the head of the academy at PSV. And he learned me a lot about structure and training preparations. And of course, you know, working with Philippe Cocu, who had a big name, who was a world-class player. That was very interesting because he has some experiences which I don't have. So, you know, talking about football and working together with him when he was U19 coach at PSV, that was really interesting. But, you know, in general, I just grew up there, like I told you before, like a nobody as a coach to a more experienced trainer and ready for Ajax, and that was really important to me.
So essentially, you talk about that ready for Ajax. Is that, you know, for all coaches in Holland, is that really the pinnacle of your coaching career? If you can get to Ajax.
Yeah, you know, for me that's for sure. But of course, you have a lot of, you know, all the people, they have different favorite clubs, and you know, of course, Ajax is the biggest club. But I think when the people would be really honest, everybody knows the best players, the best coaches, the best facilities, they're all at Ajax. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have so many talented players in the first team who make it to world-class players. So, yeah, you know, in my opinion, it was a pretty big step from PSV to Ajax.
I think same here. For myself, I was a coach at Tottenham. I always, you know, I looked around, you know, Chelsea and obviously Man United were all those also at the time were obviously the biggest and best academies and clubs around. That was always my aspiration as a coach, to really work at the highest level and challenge myself. So it's quite interesting. That's the same there then in Holland. What are your thoughts then? You know, looking across the water. What's your thoughts about English football, English academy football particularly?
Yeah, you know, England is, for me, and I think for a lot of people in Holland, England is just, how can you say it? You know, football is born there, you know, so it's really big. When I was there at Liverpool, I was there twice. It was, you know, when I came out of the airport, I took a taxi. And you know, that man, the taxi driver, he immediately started asking me, what are you doing here? I told him about Ajax and Liverpool kind of things. And we talked about 30 or 60 minutes about football. And every single day when I took another taxi, everybody was just talking about football. And I really loved that. So I think the people in England, they really love football. I think they have some great players in England. They have some beautiful stadiums. They have some really good academies. You know, I was at Chelsea. That was really good. I'm hearing a lot of good stories. Great people over there with great structuring and good people.
So William, William, we just broke up that last one. Sorry, so you said Chelsea. What was the other one you said? We just lost you a second.
It was Chelsea. I was there for myself. I heard a lot of good stories about Manchester City.
Yeah.
About some guys which are working over there. I also heard some stories about that there are some people which are hating them in England, which Okay, I can imagine. But their facilities and the people which are working there and the players, they might be very good. I saw Liverpool with my own eyes. It was great, with fantastic people, with good players, with great facilities, with the red of the club, great. And I also heard some good stories about Southampton, about developing young players. So, I think England has some really good players with a lot of good money and all the things, but it's about giving players some opportunities, and I think that's the next step. And if it will happen, well, that's a good question.
When you have you had much experience of playing teams, English teams, with your Ajax team?
Yeah.
And what's your thoughts on the players when you look at them individually? Is there a certain type of player you're seeing, or compare them to your Ajax players?
In Holland, we see like in England there are a lot of physical, strong players, and I think in Holland we try to focus a bit more on technical skills but also tactical skills. So choosing position, making the right decision, that kind of things.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because on this podcast a lot the theme, the idea that physicality is one of the main aspects looked upon in recruitment in England has come up several times, and then maybe that's not the same in Europe. So I mean, in terms of like you as a coach, when players come in, what do you look for from players when they come in on trial to the club?
I think you can't say that it's only 1 or 2 or 3 points, but it's for sure that the how do you call it? It's just how they move, how they run, are they explosive? That things are. They are just the first thing. If you can't move like a football player, it would be very hard to come in. So that's one. The second thing is about your technical skills. So you have to pass, you have to receive, you have to finish, you have to play 1v1s, that kind of things. The third thing is you have to take the good position, you have to make the decision, that kind of things. And then I think a really, really strong point, which is really important, is your mindset. So I really love the players with the growth mindset, which want to develop themselves. The players who, when they make a mistake, they don't say, I quit, I stop, but I try to do it again. And I think we should focus on that kind of players, because they would always improve.
Okay, so interesting. So you talked a little bit about PSV and their methodology. How does that contrast to that at Ajax? What are the similarities and differences?
Yeah, I was inspired a lot by some people who were really close to Johan Cruyff. They left our academy now, but they were really close with him, and they learned me a lot about principle, like game principles. They also studied in Portugal and Spain, which is really hot over there, and that's really important in our academy now. Only the game principles. So it's not only about formations in the game, but it's more about game principles. So the style of playing. So how do you want to perform on the field? And I think that had a big influence on our methodology.
Do you still have a concentration on the technique and the 1v1 as well? Is that tied in with that? Is there a balance, or is it just more about the game principles?
Yeah, and in that way, we work on 2 points. So that's one is 1v1's technical skills, and the other one is playing together as a team. And the game principles, of course, are one of the most important points at playing together. So we have two important things we separate, and they are very important to us.
So what does that look like in terms of then, say for instance, young players coming in? You've got under 8s there now. So what does that look like how does that translate to under 8s and under 9s, the 1v1 and game principles?
In that ages, we don't talk too much about the principles. We only we want them to act like the principles, if you know what I mean. But we don't tell them, because they are so young, they just have to play. But if we ask them, for example, when the opponents have the ball, what do we want? Do we want them to keep it, or do we want it to steal as fast as possible? And then, of course, they know that we have to press them up so we can steal it. So, we do it really child-friendly on that ages. And we combine it over there, of course, with the game principles and the 1v1, because we know that young players, they love it to make the moves and they love it to beat opponents. So, yeah, we have to give them some freedom to explore what's their own playing style. I told you before.
And so, how much time is spent on each of those things? How much time is spent on technique and 1v1? How much time is spent on, game possession type things, practices?
I have to say in the first place that the position games with the U8 are not that big, So it's not like they're playing like 5 against 2 or even bigger like a 7 against 3, that kind of things. They are only playing 2 against 1 or maybe 3 against 2 or something like that, but not any bigger. So I think it's a combination about 50-50. Some exercises are only like technical skills. Other ones are more combined, and other ones are more like small position games. So I think that's in balance.
And can you just tell us a little bit about the structure there, about how it's structured there at the club in terms of, are the age groups split up into different phases, and what's the emphasis there?
Yeah, I can tell you something about it, but that are some Dutch names. We have Onderbouw, we call it Onderbouw, so that are the youngest teams in our academy. That are the boys from U8 till U12. Then we call it the Middenbouw.
What's it? So it's bow. Is that wheel or something? Does that translate to that?
Yeah. Exactly. So we have let's call it the first wheel. So that's U8 till U12. We have the second wheel. That's U13 till U16. And then we have our third wheel, and that's from U17 till U19. Maybe in England you call it the U21, but at Ajax it's the second team.
And so for instance, the under wheel, the first wheel, how many times do they train a week?
They start with 3 sessions, but at the end of the season, for the youngest guys, because they came from amateur clubs, so then they start with 3 sessions, and at the end of the Underbouw, they have 4 sessions a week. At the Middenbouw, at the second wheel, we build it up from 4 till 6 sessions, and the last wheel, so the bovenbouw, the up wheel, you can call it like that. They have 7 or more sessions. So we build it up like that.
So 3 sessions or 4 sessions plus a game, or is that one of those sessions a game?
Of course. Every Saturday is a game, but now I think we started with that last year. We try to play as much as games as possible. So we have a lot of friendly games. Most of that during the week on a Tuesday. So of course then there is one training session we are losing, but we can also develop the players in the friendly games with the game principle and with the 1v1. So that's the best opponents we could wish. So sometimes now we play 2 games in a week.
Interesting. And do players come out of school and then train during the day as well in the middle, the 12 to 16s phase, or the 13s to 16s, that phase?
Yeah, we pick them up with some small buses. At a school we are working together with. Then they make it to the club. Then they start with some study. So they have some help with the study. Then we have our training sessions, and after that they have some healthy food at the club, and then they're going back with their buses. But we also have our own school, really close to the academy. It's on the same ground, but that's only focusing for the U17 guys and older. So that makes the reason why they are available to have 2 sessions a day, because the school is at our training ground. So that gives us a lot of more time.
So what age do they start coming in from school, having one day off school or however much it is?
Sorry, could you tell again?
So what age does that start? So what age do they start coming from the school during the daytime?
It starts with, the youngest kids, they come in, but it's more like after school time. So they come in like 4 p.m. or something like that. But when you talk about the middle wheel, they come in around 2:30 or 2 o'clock, 2 p.m. And then, like I told you before, they start with study. So that's how we do it.
So they only miss a little bit of school then. They miss just the end bit of school.
Yeah, they do that. But we work together with the school. They have their own top sport program. That's how we call it. And then at Ajax, we have our own teachers who are helping the kids with their homework and preparing for some tests and that kind of things. So we on one side they leave school earlier, but on the other side we help them at Ajax.
So because my question is this, because in England some clubs at 12 or even younger, they'll come in, they'll have the whole day off school. They'll come in the morning to the club and then spend the whole day at the club. This doesn't happen until they're 17 at Ajax?
From only 12 years old in England?
So yes, under 12s they'll have one day in the week. Instead of going to school, they'll come straight into the club, and then they'll do some study and then train several times a day maybe.
No, we don't know that. We only have with the U8 till the U12s. We have in Holland. It's normal that you are free on your Wednesdays afternoon. So then they are free at around 1 p.m. or something like that. So then they come earlier, and then they have a bit of longer session, a session of like 2.5 hours, sometimes 3 hours with a lot of breaks, but that's it.
So, but with the 12 to 16s, is that the same then? They only come in after, like a little bit early. They don't come in during the day, the whole day.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, interesting. And so, how do you juggle that then in terms of, the importance of school and then the importance of football with individual players?
Well, that's really important to us because we are not only developing football players, we're also developing, just normal and good human beings. So if a career ends up of a football player, they have to prepare that they can do something else, just normal things in life, and we have to prepare them. So I think it's not a good thing when we're only focusing on football, because there are a lot of other important things in life. And when the results or your attitude at school are really bad, you have a really big problem. You cannot train, and when you cannot train, you cannot play the games in the weekend. So that's really easy to us. So one, you have to do good results, but most important thing is you have to show a good attitude. Otherwise, you're done.
Fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit about position-specific training at Ajax? Is that important? When is it important? When does it start? Players focusing on positions, and also then coaches having specific positions they work with players.
Yeah, it's not only about positions, but it's more about qualities and weapons. So with the youngest teams, they play on a lot of different positions during a game. Maybe some 2 or 3 or even four positions in one game. From the U13s, when we start playing 11v11, it's a bit more, it's more organized. So I think the most of the players have to focus on 1, 2, or maybe 3 positions. But what we do in training is, so we do not only work with all the attackers together or all the defenders together, but we have to find out what the qualities are of the player and which qualities they have to work on as a weapon or maybe to improve. And then we put them together in a small group, and then we make the groups like that. So we have training sessions with small groups, but not only on positions but on qualities.
And do you have certain coaches who work with certain groups or certain positional play in terms of their speciality, like speciality coaches?
Yeah, of course, because we at Ajax we have a lot of ex-professional players who played in our first team. So every player had his own position into the game. So for example, when we have a striker, he will work with the strikers, with finishing, with first touches, with turning, with using your body, that kind of thing. So we have a lot of specialists.
I had this conversation the other day on another podcast, and we were talking about if you're a team coach at a club, and so for instance, say you're working with your group, and maybe one of the players has a technical issue. Say for instance, one of your wide players is having trouble delivering crosses. Well, yeah. How do you approach that as a coach? Do you try and remedy that all within your team training, or do you take the player out, or do you maybe send him away and say, look, you need to go away and work on this particular issue?
Yeah. I think the first step is to talk with the player and to talk about the issue. And when sometimes, the players, they don't like it when you tell it, or they don't believe you. So if they don't believe you, you have to show the videos. So I think that's very important, because videos never lie. So when you pass that step, you're moving up to the next step. And I think that's practicing. And he can do that on himself, so at home. But we could also arrange it at the club, at Ajax. And we do that. So we have two sessions a week of 60 minutes in which they can work for that qualities, like you told. But of course they can improve it as well in the friendly games, or in the games on Saturday, or just in the games in a training session. So they can do it in 3 ways: for themselves at home, in the individual sessions at Ajax, and into the games at Ajax.
So those individual sessions you talk about, what does that look like? I mean, I've been there at one session when it just seemed that the players were actually organising themselves, and this was a younger age group, seemed to be working on whatever technical issue they needed to. Yeah,
it's working like we most of the time, like when we have a team, let's say for example 16 or 18 players, we make 3 groups of that. So every group has like 5, 6 or 7 players, something around that. And then, we have to work on a lot of repetitions in their qualities or in the points they have to improve. So that's it, 60 minutes, a lot of repetitions with you hope you can fill it with real opponents who can really steal the ball. So it's really game real situations, and that's how we do it.
Is that coach led or player led?
No, that it's a combination, because the coach and the player they make together the plan on which points the player wants to focus, but the training sessions on themselves, they are led by the coaches.
Interesting. I have one more question about the 1v1 there. Say for instance, you're working with the older age groups or the middle wheels, that if you have a player who maybe, for instance, a right back or defender who's not very good at 1v1, maybe he's come in to the club a bit late and he's got lots of qualities. How much do you work with the player on that, with their 1v1 qualities? Is there less of a chance to improve that at an older age rather than a younger age, and is it really like a key requisite that you really try and keep working on?
Yeah, I think it's more difficult to work on the technical skills with older guys. So when the level is not high enough and it's so low, you have to ask yourself, did we make a good choice to bring him into our academy? So I think you can do a lot. You can how can I say it in correct English? You can improve a lot for every player, but I think there's a limit. So do you know what I mean? If you have the bad players in your academy, you did something wrong when you brought them in.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that, for instance, you've got a defender comes in, his defending's fantastic, he moves the ball well with both feet, he can pass, but maybe he's under pressure in a 1v1 situation, it's not great. Do you have expectations that he can bring the ball out, or is he just going to be that stopper? Does he have to be that rounded player? Does he have to have that 1v1 element in his game to really be an Ajax player?
Yeah, of course you want that every player beats the 1v1, but that's not realistic. It's impossible that you have 11 players who can beat opponents in the 1v1. So of course we want to improve them on that point, but it's not it's not realistic.
I suppose you don't want Memphis Depay playing centre back and taking everybody on.
Exactly. But on the other side, at Ajax we want to build up from behind. So we don't play the long ball. So what we want is defenders as well, which are comfortable on the ball, with receiving, with passing, with choosing position, that kind of thing. So that's a difficult point at Ajax. Only a good defender, that's not good enough. We also want that defender, which is capable to help and to help with building up from behind. So that makes it much more difficult for us instead of, for example, PSV or Feyenoord, who can maybe say, okay, we just choose the really good defender, but that's not good enough at Ajax because we have our own playing style.
Thinking about Holland now as a country, I mean, the country hasn't, at first team level, hasn't been having very successful time. Why do you think that is? You guys must talk about a lot in Holland. Obviously, Ajax is still producing all these top players. Why is the Holland, the national team, not having much success recently?
I think that's because we were lazy the last years. Because I think the whole world said that we were really good at improving young players. We were really good with our academies for like 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And after that, we started believing that all the people were true. So everybody was visiting Holland to watch how we are developing our young players, and everybody took the best points of that. They took their back to the country, and I think almost all the countries they developed, like Germany, like Belgium, like England for sure. Everybody was trying to become better, but we were just lazy, and we were just waiting and just believing that we were very good. But when you start believing that, you have a really big problem, because then you don't improve anymore. And that was a big mistake. And now there is something changing, but it's only starting really slowly. But I think we have still some big problems in Holland.
Someone else mentioned the other day about maybe that a lot of young Dutch players are going into other countries, the Premier League for instance, and then maybe there's a bit of a talent drain on the top young players, and then they may be feeding into the same problem in England, as they're not getting the opportunities that our English players are getting, and some maybe are not fulfilling that potential.
So what's your question again?
So what do you think? Maybe there's been some people saying that a lot of young Dutch players are coming to England very young, maybe at 15, 16, and then maybe that they're not getting the opportunities, they're not developing as quickly or as well as they would do maybe in Holland, and this maybe is affecting the Holland national team.
Yeah, of course. We don't like it when young players leave, because that's money for our clubs. That's nice to watch on Saturdays or Sundays on television. But I think the big money is very strong for them. So what we see is that a lot of people which came for example, from a poor background, that they are thinking about leaving Holland. But I think sometimes when you come into an academy of Chelsea, for example, or Manchester City, there are a lot of other good players. So and a lot of good coaches as well. So I think they will develop. That's not the issue. But the issue is, I think, that the chances you get as a young player in the British Premier League, that's really difficult. And then they start as on a loan, to Bournemouth or that kind of clubs, and then you can ask yourself, is it better to loan to Bournemouth, or for example to make your first steps into the Eredivisie in Holland, for example, for the Ajax first team?
Well, it's interesting now that, because there was a player's just left Arsenal, a young player, and gone to play in Benfica. Do you think maybe that could be a trend? Maybe English players more moving abroad and thinking about, there's the lack of opportunities aren't in England. Maybe they should go and try it in Portugal, Spain, or even Holland.
Of course, because we also had some talks in Holland about is it always a problem that England is buying a lot of good players? Or maybe on the other side, could we bring back some other players who don't get their chances in England, but who are focusing on developing and become better, and they maybe could do that in Holland, but then you have to tell them a good story, like for example, we're playing Champions League, you will get your chances. We have a really good plan to develop you. After 2 or 3 or maybe 4 years, we can sell you to a bigger club. That kind of thing. So of course there are some opportunities, and I can totally agree. That the minds and the thoughts of the players, because they are ambitious, they have big plans, but when they look around, they see a lot of good players, and of course that's the strength of the Premier League, but the chances for the young players, they're not that good.
Because I know you guys are famous for doing a lot of scouting in Scandinavia, in Northern Europe. Would you consider scouting in England then for young players?
Well, I don't know, because I'm not scouting at Ajax. I'm working with just with the players on the pitch every day. So I'm not focused on scouting players, but maybe in the future it's an opportunity, and I think most of the times in this kind of situations, when it starts with only one player, after that it could go really fast. So then there could come some more, but I don't know, maybe in the future.
Okay, and just a couple more questions, mate, because I know you're busy. Just what your neighbours Belgium are currently going through a golden patch in terms of player development. What's the perspective from within Dutch football community about how they have become so successful?
Yeah, in Holland there are a lot of people who are thinking that it's coincidence what's happening in Belgium, but that's the same lazy mindset, So you're just talking about coincidence. I think that the truth is that they were a bit lucky with this generation of players, but they did a lot of good things in their academies. For example, they changed the format, so they changed the small spaces for the youngest players from U8 till U13. They are playing in much more smaller spaces now than, for example, 5 or 6 years ago. So they improved a lot. So what does it mean when you play in really small spaces? It means that players have to find solutions in small spaces with less time. So of course they would improve, and I think Belgium they took the right way, and they are improving really good. And I think they we have to focus on them for the next couple of years, because they're really good. They're doing a good job.
I've played against a lot of young Anderlecht teams, and always been impressed with those guys' technical ability and tactical ability. What's your thoughts on that team?
Anderlecht is really strong. They against us most of the time they want to play in a 1-3-4-3 formation. They want to press up high. They have strong players, fast players. Also some 3 or 4 really technical players. So Anderlecht is really strong teams, and but there is more than only Anderlecht. They have Racing Genk, they have Standard Liège, they have Club Brugge. They have a lot of good teams.
Also, you mentioned earlier that in America we have a lot of listeners in America. What's your thoughts on the American game and the development model?
Well, that's really hard to say for me, but when I was there, I saw a lot of really ambitious young players, girls and boys. So because the girls are really doing a great job over there, because it's really big, much bigger than here in Holland. But what I missed when I was there, that there was no structure. There was no there were no real leagues or something like that. So the teams had to drive for 3, 4, or 5 hours to play a game, and they only did it when I was there once in 2 weeks. So I think that's too less. It's too empty to improve. So I don't know how it is now, but in my opinion, it's growing over there. And I really like the mindset of the Americans because they really want to work hard. They are using the data to improve, and I think they have a lot of possibilities to improve. But to be honest, I don't know exactly how it works over there now.
So, what advice would you give to a young aspiring footballer, a young player who wants to go all the way?
I think you never stop dreaming, and remember that you can make it to your own top if you work hard and when you are clever, and make sure that you will always be prepared. Because I think losing to prepare is preparing to lose, and you can only make it when you act like a winner. So the most important thing is never stop dreaming and work really hard.
And what about advice to a young coach?
Well, I've stolen this one from Steve Jobs, but he ended his speech at Stanford in 2005 with "Stay hungry, stay foolish." Because I think that when you always be hungry, you will always develop. And in my opinion, life is about developing. If you're young or old, it doesn't matter. So in my opinion, everything has to do with improving, developing, and become better. So that's the reason why I like it very much. Stay hungry, stay foolish. You have to act like you're stupid, and then you will become better.
Very good, very good. And finally, obviously, MyPersonalFootballCoach.com, what we do is very much about encouraging ball mastery and 1v1 with young players particularly. Can you just tell us why is it so important, ball mastery and 1v1 training?
It's so important because I think that players, they like the game, but when it's really simple. When you can't pass the ball to your teammates, it doesn't make sense. So the whole game doesn't make sense, and it's not fun. So you get bored, and that's not good. So that's really important. On the other side, for example, on the professional level, when you watch football or soccer on TV, you want to see nice games, with a lot of attractive actions, with a lot of 1v1s. I prefer watching that games instead of watching, the lazy games, the games with a low rhythm. So that are two very important reasons to me to focus on that.
Willem Weiss, thank you very much. It's been fantastic having you on.
Thank you so much, and I really enjoyed talking with you. So it was a great pleasure to me.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the MyPersonalFootballCoach.com Soccer Player Development Podcast. MyPersonalFootballCoach.com's Dynamic Ball Mastery Program is the world's leading online individual technical training program, proven and developed at the highest level in the English Premier League. Sign up now to train like the pros and take your game to the next level. Master the ball, master the game.